A New Hope, Nier Chapter 88. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of Azazyel's stories. Within not even an hour the news of Weiss's father's death broke into public news, with Faunus rights groups literally throwing celebrations in the streets of Vale apparently. Yeah, Weiss was not happy about that. But thankfully the Faunus within Beacon, including Blake, despite defiantly being glad about the man's death, didn't say a damned word about it. Otherwise, I would put their head through the arena floor. In order to get Weiss out of the public's view until the news died down, I had Commander White reassign my team's mandatory mission to an escort mission. Or more particularly an escort mission where we would be traveling across the forests and mountains that surrounded Vale to the chosen location where YoRHa would be sending the rockets carrying the fabricators that will be rebuilding the space station out in Remnants orbit. But this makes no sense. Dust literally loses all its power once it leaves the Remnants orbit. So how in the heck are you guys going to send a computer system up into space? Ruby demanded, as she was the most mechanically savvy in my time despite Weiss obviously knowing more about dust, and even, she nodded in confusion at YoRHa's plans. Granted, only Weiss knew the androids were. Well, androids, and for now that was for the best. But Remnant was horribly backward in its energy technology studies, as they were completely reliant on the magical properties of dust, which did everything from heating/cooling/electricity to even more esoteric things like spatial or gravity control while using the respective dusts. That is true. That's why I will be using my semblance to remove the gravity of the rocket, and the effect will last 5 minutes. Thus, giving the rockets more than enough time for them to launch into the atmosphere and get into position. I explained which was the core of our method and what is allowing us to skip so many steps in making a far more powerful rocket system to deadlift the machines up into orbit. But with the payload literally not weighing anything, that allowed for a far smaller and more efficient rocket system to send it toward the shattered moon, so it could begin harvesting materials. But how will you be adjusting yourself in space to change course or make corrections? Ruby continued, and I pointed out solar sails and stuff that could help make minor corrections. And in the end, this was a trial test. So, our jobs are to simply defend the worksite, and what keeps Grim away? There's nothing around here but the Everfall forest. Kira asked, and I nodded. That's the mission details. It will take a couple of days, but thankfully we got a trailer so we can take turns sleeping in the night. But yeah, this mission was made by me, and paid by me and my company, so Ruby, don't be too sparing with your ammo, this is an all-expense-paid trip. I said, bringing a grin to her face as I sent the details of the dust ammo loadout we came prepared with. Because in the end, I didn't believe making a launch site and launching several rockets within a 2 to 3 day span was going to go over well in the grim-infested forest, even if we had YoRHa ground and air support. This was still very much a hostile world, and fate wasn't a kind thing. I was literally paranoid to the point of having YoRHa lock onto the landing area's surroundings with long-range mortars that were being remotely controlled back in Beacon by Commander White and the other operators. Alright, so the bullheads will be laying some missile fire to clear out a landing zone, then I will be going alone to clear out a compacted raised area where everything can land safely and make it more difficult for any Grim to approach. So don't leave the bullheads until they actually land. I warned them, as they knew they would only get in the way of my terraforming. Even though it looked like my team was riding a normal bullhead, but in reality, it was just a facade for a far more advanced YoRHa dropship design that got scrapped for being unwieldy, as no amount of armor could deal with anti-aircraft laser battery systems from the machine army down on the surface. And thus, when the bullhead began shooting its missiles, that was a lie. It shot a dozen powerful condensed balls of masso energy that exploded with carrier missile levels of power that shook the bullhead's frame as the force of the annihilating energies violently cleared out the forest surroundings, but left no pesky forest fires or anything due to how the masso burnt itself out in a violent explosion and leaving no burning material. Alright, time for me to get to work, I muttered, feeling the small weight of masso contamination in the air from the high purity used in the munitions. But thankfully YoRHa was literally a silver bullet, in the meaning that it easily blocked off far greater amounts of masso energy, so my team and even most remnant humans without even unlocked YoRHa would be fine with small amounts of masso in the surroundings. If their hair turns to salt to bleed off the energy, it's no big deal. As soon as I landed on the ground, I stomped on it as I reached into the earth magic within me, and I growled as the surrounding soil all around me for more than 1,000 yards pulled towards me and created a 500-meter wide square platform made out of stone that was raised off the ground by 15 meters. That way the more agile Grim would have a hard time leaping up there. I almost slouched at feeling my magic drain so deeply in moving tens of tons in materials, but either way I straightened up and waved towards the half-dozen cargo ships that joined the single ship that took us from Beacon to here. Even with Commander White and her operators only being at work in Vale's electronic industry for a week, she had already bought out a small bullhead company to disguise our bullhead's movements. And where did she get the money? Oh, she liberated it from the White Fang who stole it from Atlas or otherwise just robbed the electronic accounts of the Mistral crime families. Jake, do you think you have the strength to dig out ditches around the platform to stop the creeps and roller grims? 2B asked me after she dropped out of her airship and landed beside me as the ships began dropping down cargo containers for machines, and one of which was retrofitted to act as a rest area for us puny humans who couldn't work for weeks on end. Yeah, just gimme a sec 2B, I said, giving her a nod as I was happy she was here acting to lead the security team from YoRHa, even though 9S would have gotten along with Ruby and Jean probably. While I got to use my magic to dig further 5-meter deep ditches beside the raised platform, my team finally got off their bullhead, which was the only one to actually land, as the rest were just dropping off supplies and were being remotely controlled back from Beacon, so other than 6-0 and a couple other operator units who was operating the machinery down here. The only other androids down here in the field were 2B, 6E, and some other B models I didn't really know honestly.